welcome to our work session today, as our series of work sessions on the county budget. Just a note, I know this one was noticed to be in the commission chambers, but we are upstairs in room 2300 due to construction happening in the chambers right now. And we've got scheduled the surveyor's office, so we'll turn the time over to our surveyor, Gary Radcliffe.
Okay, I'm going to let Anthony basically make this presentation. The way I look at this is going to be his budget. Obviously, the 2020 stuff, stuff that I was...
You think he's going to win?
Well, he better. So...
Is it thirsty one?
Thank you.
I'm good.
Thank you.
I'm good. You're good? I'm good, yeah.
Some of this information I want to share before Anthony kicks this off. I shared this, or Anthony shared this with Nathan, Commissioner Ivey, about a year or two ago. I don't think the other members of the commission are privy to some of these facts I want to share with you regarding the history of the county surveyor's office. And it's kind of my last hoorah to brag a little bit about what this office has done. And then it'll be Anthony's bidding to do the bragging, but I'm going to do it for now. And I'll do it very briefly because I know we're on a timeline here. Historically, you know, the county surveyor's office originated clear back in 1898, as far back as we can trace it anyway. But the last 75 years, from about the mid-1940s to the present day, the office of the county surveyor has been basically 3 county surveyors. There's one county surveyor that was here forever, and he did some amazing things that was really progressive in nature for that time frame. And it's amazing that people still today that brag about how great this office is don't realize the history of how that all came about. And it came about starting clear back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. So what I'm getting at here, the deputy surveyor underneath that county surveyor, when he retired, was the county surveyor that I first started working for when I started in 1980. And he, in turn, was the deputy surveyor to that original surveyor that I'm bragging about a little bit. And that surveyor that I started working for in 1980, he was very progressively minded. I started again in 1980, and in 1990, he sent me back to Sunnyvale, California, headquarters of Trimble Navigation. And Trimble Navigation was the first major company or corporation that got permission from the federal government, basically from the Department of Defense, to utilize satellite technology for surveying purposes. And Utah County was the first government entity in the state of Utah to acquire GPS technology. This is in 1990. Now, there was one private entity down on the southern end of the state that had it, but Utah County was the very first government entity. And back in that day, the equipment that the county invested in about $110,000 in this GPS equipment. And it amounted to 3 large boxes, and they were heavy, bulky, awkward. You put them on your back and you hike up the hill or wherever you're going. And they were basically satellite receivers. In addition to the receivers in these big, bulky suitcases, they had antennas. You had a tripod to pack. There was a lot to it to be able to gather the GPS data. And we did that for a number of years.
It wasn't just on this back then?
What's that
It
now?
wasn't just on your phone or your watch?
No, this obviously predated the phone, the car GPS, the boat GPS.
Yeah.
We were literally pioneering, the technology. We were experimenting with things that Trimble Navigation wasn't even sure that it would do. We were trying to be progressive that way, and these things I'm talking about are things that they were later able to create the technology to do, so it became an upgrade to these big bulky receivers. But I'll be honest with you, when I was sent back there in 1990 to Sunnyvale, California to learn about this, I went kicking and screaming. I thought my old conventional surveying equipment would I thought all that with that equipment, I could do whatever. And shortly after that time frame, we became a little more progressive when some of the other GPS equipment, some of the other GPS technology came out. We found out we could be more mobile, not have to pack these big bulky receivers around. It was around that time that I was fortunate to hire a person by the name of Anthony Canto. Okay, now, Mr. Canto is, and I want to brag a little bit about him, very intelligent man. He's progressively minded. He'll be a great county surveyor. He always has been progressively minded.
You know what, this really is kind of nice.
Would
Maybe we could ask some other probative
I would ask
questions, and then,
commission. I would ask that the commission continue as much as you possibly can, give him the support and leaders when it comes to technological advances, because the reason I think that we've been highly successful over the years is as far as limited manpower and those kinds of things are for some of these technological appurtenances, if you will, or gadgets. Okay. So anyway, that's kind of a brief history. We've I guess in essence, probably the most important thing that I've done in my 40-year career here, and particularly the last 10 as the county surveyor, is to hire this guy. We've been able to stay up with what's going on. I know Amelia's office has done some amazing things with for her office with technology and her procedures, and we've been trying to do that all along. I just want this body to understand that. So I need your commitment. I hope we'll have that over the years as Anthony takes office and continues on. So I'm going to turn the time over to him. Anthony actually was the one that prepared this little PowerPoint. He put a lot of thought into it. He and I have had discussions about it, but he's kind of the brainchild behind the actual presentation. So.
All right, this is Anthony Canto with the County Surveyor's Office. So I'll start this with, well, maybe I will.
Demonstration on how technology works.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna look at that. I can start with it anyways. There we go. Thank you. So what do? We are the caretakers of the infrastructure of the system that protects ownership. That is the public land survey system. We're experts in our statutory responsibilities. We're goal-oriented. We're fiscally conservative. We track our work daily, and we make all of our data available to the public. Here's a slide. We were asked to kind of compare ourselves with some of our other counties, and this shows PLS monuments and square miles. You can see with Weber and Salt Lake County how much bigger we are, not only in area, but as far as public land survey system monuments that we maintain. We're at least double in every one of those. This is our staffing plan. We have an elected county surveyor, an appointed chief deputy. We have a field director that was given to us this year that we currently haven't been able to fill. That's been open for about 3 months, and we're just not able to fill that. Wages in the private field are super high right now, and we're just not getting applicants for that. We have 3 2-man crews. 2 of them have chief technicians and a technician 1, and then we have 1 crew that we underfilled, and it's a technician 2 kind of acting as a crew chief with a technician, and a mapping specialist does all of our drafting and drawing and things like that. So with the help of you guys, the commission, we were able to get properly staffed at the end of 2020. In 1980, the surveyor's office employed 13 individuals, but like Gary said, staying on the cutting edge of technologies allowed us to cut those down. Now, the county has grown, which has put a lot of burden on our office, but I feel like when we get fully staffed, when we fill that last position, I think we're gonna be staffed to be able to handle the county's growth for a long time. Unless statutory responsibilities change, I think we have plenty of staff to get our work done for many years. Same thing, here's a graph of Utah County Surveyor's Office versus Weaver County and Salt Lake County. As far as the orange is licensed individuals and the blue is total staff.
It's that, one of those three licensed positions that we had, the difficulty filling.
Yeah.
How do you, if I could just ask a question, I see comparisons with, Salt Lake or county. How do you compare with like San Juan County, which has massive land? It's huge.
Yeah.
Compared to us.
Well, San Juan County has a surveyor, he has 1 helper.
Yeah.
He's
they
just
have,
not getting.
geographically though, they're bigger states back east, they're just massive. So, when they have 1 surveyor and 1 helper.
Yeah, they struggle down there with funding and getting the work done. They really struggle with trying to keep up with this kind of stuff, but they don't have the same kind of growth that we do, so they're not losing monuments at a rate like we would in
That's
the
a good
urban
point,
county.
that's a good point, because we're talking about not just land mass, but we're also talking about growth and working with cities and, inside and, monument preservation for, because your responsibility is pretty much those corners.
Mm-hmm.
And then inside the cities, as we talk, we have a whole different dilemma going on.
Yeah, and we'll kind of touch on that later in the slides, but that's a great point that unincorporated county is getting smaller.
Yeah.
But the cities are getting bigger, and that doesn't affect what we do. So in a positive way, it affects us in a negative way. The construction and the cities growing creates more development that takes more of our monuments out. So here's some of our budget numbers from 2020. So we were asked to try and cut back the budget because of the pandemic. So we didn't fill our positions until October. We didn't fill any of our new positions till October. So as of October 7th, we would only use 50% of our 2020 budget. And we have filled those positions since. We had new crews starting this week. But as of December 7th, we'd only use 50%.
Just to clarify on that, but is the chief, or the field director is still
It's still open,
open? You're just talking about the crew.
the crews, yeah. Yeah.
But just to make a point with that, Tanner, is, the responsibility, the primary responsibility of the field director is to take a lot of the workload off of Anthony and I. A lot of the stuff we would like to be doing as far as education, regarding the public land survey system, that kind of thing that helps prevent some of the damages. Some of that is on hold because we're doing so much work with those field crews and what's going on in the day-to-day operations that we just can't be effective in all arenas. That field director will be exclusively responsible for the day-to-day operation of the field crews.
That field director also. Tying back, we talked, you were telling me about how they have to tie, bring it back into the office, tie it back. Maybe I'm using the wrong term.
Yeah, that would be one of the prime functions
Is that
of that
right?
position.
Yeah, he'll be overseeing that.
Back, or however you.
We'll just make it available to the public, create deliverables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this is a good example of what we're talking about with there. So our 2020 metric wasn't very specific, but it was protect boundaries through the protection of the PLSS corners in developments. Now, in 2020, we were able to get 14 monument excavations permit filled out and paid for. Now, those 14 monuments protect the private property rights of approximately 6,000 parcels that would tie in one way or another to those 14 monuments. Now, that only brought in $2,900, but we would have had an additional $2,100 if we were able to fix our fee schedule earlier in the year. But that protection did save us $14,000 in labor costs. On the alternative side of that, we found or had reported 54 obliterated monuments with no permitting. And that cost the county through labor about $54,000. Now, same thing, keep in mind, we didn't fill those positions and we had 2 of our current employees leave for different opportunities. So we were down to 1 field crew for most of 2020. So
remind me on how this revenue is generated and from whom, on the 2,900?
So it's permitting, it's a $400 permit fee currently now that we've taken out fixed the fee schedule. So it's $400 per monument. And then that company who takes that out, we go out and we'll mark where the position goes, but they are responsible for the replacement, so that burden doesn't fall on the county.
Now we've also fixed on the other end, when they obliterate those, that we've got something that has some teeth into it. I hope, that's what we worked on this last year too.
There is teeth in the law.
Yeah, so we
Yes.
came up with I don't think it was called a penalty, it was I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on what it's called.
But so it's not a penalty, so the person pulling the permit, are they required to because you're identifying a lost or a damaged monument?
It is by state law and county ordinance, if they even work within 30 feet of one of these monuments, they're to pull a permit.
Got it.
Yeah.
But the problem we were finding with it though, is that the penalty for it was so low that their time in doing a development, they would not even pull it and they'd just run it over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was costing them more to wait on days and time to pull a permit.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we put some teeth in our fee schedule there, so it's progressive now to where it can get up to $50,000 for each monument pulled on the third fence.
right.
And we have a commitment from the attorney's office to back us on these. So in our 2021 metric, we want to replace all monuments within 14 days of discovery. So construction hasn't slowed down. In 2020, we were hoping to catch up on this, but for the same reasons, not filling those positions and losing those 2 employees that we did have, we were just not able to get ahead of that like we were hoping to. But in 2021, I really feel like we're gonna be able to do that fully staffed. 2020 metric was to, was review all record of survey and final local entity plats. As of October 5th, we'd reviewed 395 record of survey plats and 18 final local entity plats. At the end of the year, there's companies that'll always bring in everything they've done for the year. So we anticipate another 150 to 200 of them to come in by the end of the year with that rush we always get. So probably get over 600 of those plats by the end of the year.
You're saying that'll be the total?
Total.
So you expect another 195?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Part of the problem we've been experiencing too, that pulls resources away from between what Anthony and I have had to do with the field crew and record survey plats and final local entity plats. When it comes to final local entity plats, some of these cities, the timelines for those local entity plats are driven by statute. So in other words, there's a certain timeline there where by a certain time frame they have to have those plats and documents to the lieutenant governor's office. Sometimes on occasion I'll have a city that'll contact me and say, well, we've got to have this to the lieutenant governor's office day after tomorrow. Is there any way you can look at this plat and approve it? In most cases, I've tried to accommodate that and drop everything else I might be doing and review those documents so they can meet that timeline. Otherwise, a lot of I would surmise that they're starting their process all over again. These final local entity plats, those are annexations oftentimes that affect development. So you're not only making a hardship for the city having to go through a process all over again, but you're delaying a developer. So it's quite a to-do.
All right, in our 2021 metrics, we want to have these all made available online within 14 days. So what a record of survey plat is any survey that shows a boundary requires a record of survey to be created, part of the public record. That responsibility falls on the county surveyor's office according to State Code 172317. They also made a new section of code 57-1-45 that a county assigned filing number on a record of survey plat is a requirement before a boundary line agreement can be recorded. So that's put a lot of pressure on us to make sure these are brought in, reviewed, and filed and made available online in a timely fashion. So we do, as far as our office, we go over these. We don't check them for accuracy, we check them for completeness. So there's a list in state code of what needs to be on a record of survey plat. So we go through these, check them for state compliance. If we find an error, we call the surveyor and say, hey, we found this. If you want to come in and fix it, we'll hold it for a few days, come in, and it's a great service to the private surveying industry. We get thank yous for this little service all the time, so they don't have errors making it to the public record. Because once we make it a public record, we won't pull it back out. It's just kind of a chart showing the growth of record of survey plats through the years. They just keep getting more and more of them every year. Our 2020 metric was to make all of our field data electronically discoverable and available to the public. We were able to do that. All of the work that we did in 2020, we were able to make deliverables out of and make available online. We got a little more specific for 2021. We want to revisit, retie, reobserve, and re-elevate 650 monuments. So the number one function of our office, as we've stressed over the years, is having these monuments in the ground. Now, having them in the ground is part of it, but we also produce the data to the public in the form of tie sheets. This is an example of what one of our tie sheets looks like. So we provide coordinate data in two different horizontal datums, as well as the elevation datum NAVD 29. We're currently updating our vertical system to NAVD 88, and we're doing that through regular maintenance by going out and tying these corners. We're not going out and doing it just sending our crews out without having another objective while we're out there. So we're going to try and do 650, which is a pretty hefty task, but with the new employees and being fully staffed, we think that's a number we can legitimately hit.
And you're talking about corners, right?
Yeah.
Corner monuments, yeah.
So
So
just the PLSS, not the other type of monuments, you know what I'm talking about.
those are just kind of a couple of monuments and what they look like.
Now that I know what they are, I'll walk around, sometimes I see them in the street.
Yeah. For every half mile through the whole county,
Right.
so.
Of course, I don't know the difference between a corner monument and another, so I don't know if they have different stamps on it.
Yeah, the different markings.
Yep. In 2020, our metric was to adequately and professionally keep up with requests made by other county departments. We were able to do that. We helped other departments in topographic surveys, road right-of-way stakeout. We surveyed the gun range, Payson Canyon realignment. We check all of the county subdivisions in unincorporated county to make sure they put their monuments where they belong. We do plat review for planning and zoning. They've asked us to go over those, make sure that everything closes, looks okay. We've been doing that, and we do all the county boundary surveys and the creation of legal descriptions associated with those. In 2021, kind of the same thing, but we want to have a 15-day turnaround on all projects. One thing that we've started doing a little more of is tax parcel sales. When those tax parcels come up for sale, they've been asking us to go out and make sure they actually exist, sit where they're supposed to sit before they put them up for sale. Our 2020 metric was identification of original PLSS corners and outlying areas. This was actually something we were still able to meet with the shortened crew. So these old original stones and pipe and cap surveys were performed at least 100 years ago, so it makes it challenging to find them. It also makes it imperative that we continue the campaign to track these down and record them. Every year that goes by makes it harder and harder to identify these. In current years, we have found monuments that are almost unrecognizable. But with our bare bones crew, we were able to meet the department goal and recover 26 monuments in Township 10 South, Range 5 East, and 6 monuments in Township 10 South, Range 2 West. In 2021, we want to find and resurvey 30 monuments in Township 10 South, Range 3 East. As Gary touched on earlier, Utah County's always been progressive in the recovery of the monuments, and that's why we're the best county to work in. And I say that because that's the feedback we get. We've never had a surveyor not come in and say Utah County is the best county to work in. And what that translates to the public is less of a cost for a survey. If you want a subdivision lot surveyed in Utah County versus Sanpete County, you're probably talking $1,500 to $2,000 different in price because of the work that we do at the monuments, which allows the private surveying field to go out and do what they're supposed to do.
Which hopefully is a price savings to the consumer too, so.
So in Township 10 South, 3 East, we found a handful of monuments in the early 1980s and created what was called NAD 27, NAD 27 coordinates on them. But they've not been visited since, they've not been retied, they've not been observed with GPS. We want to go in and find and survey at least 30 of these monuments. That'll keep us from getting behind or losing the positions of these monuments.
Just as a side note, everything that we deal with when we talk about these monuments, has to do with private land.
Private land.
Private land and state land. As a subsidiary of the state of Utah, we will try to identify and protect the state's interests as well. But private land is first. We don't get in on the interior of federally held interests at all.
Is that why, American Fork Canyon's not all surveyed up, ready to go?
In part, yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of private land, I mean, there's some patented mining claims up there,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, there's some concern that, you know, those are legitimate privately held interests, but land values aren't really high up there either. That's what we try to focus with our resources.
And is that the reason why the areas that you picked, that you mentioned, you went out, I guess the question is, how do you determine we're gonna go out into this area, this township, this range, this area, and start to find the monuments again over this area?
And I'll answer that. We've been, I opted, and it's been kind of an arbitrary thing on my part. I started this clear back in the early 90s, being very progressive in some of these outlying areas that involve private land. And what I want to tackle are those areas where there's lots of landowners involved, but maybe lots of parcels that with private land.
So it's kind of a numbers game then, I mean, you're looking at affecting as many as possible.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, once you break open an area, typically what draws us into an area is a request by a citizen. And with the nature of this business, sometimes you have to go outside of his property interest and find something that's more easily recognizable. Identify that and work your way in to maybe where his actual property sits, with corners of tied to his direct property interest. I mean, it's like a puzzle. You know, once you find more and more pieces, you're able to fill in better, more easily. That's kind of the game you play. So you can't focus on a small little tight area in this kind of work without having to find a lot of things. And we'll work until we get a whole township done. So we're not having to go back years down the road and identify another little area in that big area.
And we try and beat development also. That's one of the big criteria to getting in there. This 10-3 East area we're looking to get into next year is bird's eye down to Indianola. And with the area, with so many people moving to Sanpete County, that's just one of those areas that could take off, and it's better to get in there and get property squared away before development gets there.
Point of Mountain, between Salt Lake and Utah County, up the Suncrest area. We were up there in 1995 identifying these when it was nothing but rough two-track road and steep, brushy slopes. And we didn't know that Micron was even going to be coming in at the time we were in there looking at these things. when Micron came in, the whole world went crazy up there. We just beat development by a year or two. We didn't know it.
Micron's gonna sell that property behind there. That, all that mountain basically behind, the process of that right now.
Huh?
There's a lot of.
Yeah, and all the corners are identified, so it'll make, property ownership more better, easier to identify.
And they have been identified, but that's one of the main areas we're losing our monuments is in that area up there. We actually have 4 missing monuments in that area that we're working on currently, trying to get put back in. So, these next ones are just kind of metrics for 2021 that we didn't have in 2020. So 2021, I want to be able to meet and educate 12 entities on our monument excavation permits. This has already been touched on, but while unincorporated county is shrinking year by year, cities are expanding and construction is everywhere. This construction obliterates our monuments. We did a good job in 2020 by updating our ordinance and our fee schedule to help combat this. With our bare bones crew, we struggled in 2 areas, and those have been enforcement and education. So we have a goal to meet with at least 12 entities about the importance of the system as well as the mechanisms that have been put in place to protect these through our monument excavation permit. And the entities we intend to focus on are cities, large contractors, and colleges. And the college is actually kind of an important one to me. I've already did it one time this year, but we go into the construction management and meet with the project managers, the people who are trying to become project managers, make them aware of this and what the system is or the process for taking these out. I think that'll help us as these guys move into some of the bigger construction companies to know this is what they have to do. Here's just a picture of us up above Cedar Fort. We have a monument right there at a fence corner. This is kind of how a lot of the areas are. These section corners are the corners of people's property, so you'll get these all fenced in around one of our monuments. We want to create 2 new township resurvey plats in the 2011 adjustment format, which is a new format. So this goal wasn't on our radar. We'd intended to upgrade our entire system in 2022. We talked to all you guys about that new system coming out. Unfortunately, the National Geodetic Survey has decided to push that adjustment back until at least 2025. So we've decided to do a systematic update of our current system, which is NAT 83 HARN, and upgrade that to NAT 83 2011. I know 2011 seems like that would be an old system, but that's the new system. These things just never seem to work on what their years look like. The 2022 probably won't come out till 2028 kind of thing. So we're gonna upgrade it to 2011, and that update will put us on the same system broadcasted by the state's AGRC VRS network that is widely utilized in the field. And this will include a vertical datum update that will be in compliance with the newly introduced FEMA floodplain maps. So that just came out this year. FEMA updated their floodplain maps. So we're going to upgrade our vertical datum to be in compliance with that.
Yeah, we've already had 4 or 5 citizens call in the last couple of months. I've talked to several individuals on the phone, frustrated because their lender, reached out to them and their insurance company, and their rates are being jacked up because they're in a floodplain, and historically they weren't in a floodplain. So it's the update of the FEMA, these floodplain maps. So what we're doing here is hopefully going to at least give the private surveyor some more ammunition to do work for those citizens that need the work done, who's basically take back to the insurance carrier and say, yeah, my client is not in the floodplain, and here's the proof type thing. A lot of times that's the situation. They're being accused because the maps say they're in the floodplain when in fact they may not be.
And this is a new issue for our office because in years past, we might get a question on one of these elevations in a FEMA floodplain once every couple of years.
Yeah, not very often.
Now that these came up, it's came up quite often, so we're gonna try and get out. We've started going around the areas around the lake. That's where we're gonna start our work here, but we want in 2021 to publish at least 2 of these new township resurvey plats. Doesn't seem like a huge goal, but that's going back out, retying, resurveying, re-elevating all of the monuments in those townships. We plan on doing this as part of our tying process for normal maintenance to lessen the burden on the taxpayer, where we're not just out trying to re-elevate everything on the taxpayer's dollar.
Is this issue coming up more in unincorporated or in city boundaries?
Well, the phone calls obviously are in city boundaries,
Yeah.
at least the ones I've taken.
A lot of it's Provo area down towards the lake is where you're coming up.
I've been getting some up from up north in the Highland area, on some of the canals and,
Rivers. And part of that is, when I worked in the federal government and dealing with FEMA on this issue, is that cities need to be highly engaged in this process and know exactly where those, because if they're issuing permits, they should issue permits and the buyers should have a
clear understanding.
clear understanding of what's going on, because you're issued a permit, and then you're issued a permit for a basement,
Yeah, yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
in a floodplain.
Can you imagine being in that home for 10 years and all of a sudden they're
And all of a
saying,
sudden, there goes your price.
yeah,
And it's to the point to where it puts you out of the home in some cases. It's
Yeah.
just so high.
well, we're hoping through this process that we're gonna be getting better information out there, more information for the private surveying companies that are doing those elevation certificates for their clients, you know, for them to submit to those lenders and insurance companies. This will help with that process.
So how tight is FEMA's, you know, sometimes they're just general with their plan. This is the floodplain. Are they very specific about the elevation on this?
Well,
You know exactly where it's at?
yeah.
Is that how you're going after it?
yeah, their maps are still, they bragging about their maps, and it's definitely an upgrade from what their old maps used to look like. And to me, I don't think they're that much of an upgrade.
Because all down through Provo, following the river, all the way to the lake, technically, if they're a problem with Deer Creek, is a floodplain area. Because if that broke, this whole area right here was just floodplain.
Yeah.
Well, one of the issues with the new FEMA floodplain maps coming out is there's no benchmarks. So they have this new system that relates, but there's nothing to tie it to. So that's what we're doing. We're creating those benchmarks in the system that ties to the FEMA floodplain, so they can actually relate it on the ground
Okay.
instead of making assumptions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great explanation, mate. So these section corners, again, they'll have each section corner will now be a benchmark. So it won't just provide good elevation data for property line work, but it'll be a benchmark for what we're talking about here, for elevations.
All right, and in 2021, we want to keep our crews educated on new techniques and procedures by having quarterly meetings. So surveying is a field that's pretty dynamic. The legislation changes quite a bit, the technology changes, the industry standards change. So we want to have, and with all the new crew members and large turnover in our department, we want to hold a class on these issues on January 25th, April 19th, August 9th, and October 18th. So the first of the year, we're just going to put those on our calendars. All of those are Mondays. We're just going to expect our guys to be there, and we're going to put on, you know, a couple-hour update on these things and give the crews the ability to come in and tell anybody in management of current procedures or anything that looks like we need to address on our side. So we feel like this will keep our crews productive and keep a good working environment that allows improvement in all areas from top to bottom and bottom to top. And we do have one new ask for 2021. It's a robotic total station. So a robot is the industry standard for line of sight surveying. And what it is, it uses kind of a combination of GPS technology and total station technology, but it's a one-man operation. So when you have one of these robots, you set it up over a control point, and it follows you. So you have your rover, and you walk around and it follows you, and it speeds things up dramatically, even over GPS. The downfall of it is it does have to have line of sight. But for projects like the Payson Canyon realignment or the gun range, things like that, one guy can go out there and zip through that in half the time we've been doing it. The other advantage that it has is we can set these up outside of an intersection and have one guy go out in an intersection and get in and out of it super quick. That's one of the safety concerns we have in our department is people in, you know, we have a section corner in the intersection of 8th East and 8th North in Orem. Gary and I replaced that one day. It's a death trap in that thing trying to get any work done. This allows somebody to get in and out of an intersection in probably less than 1 minute.
One
question I have about that piece of equipment there is there any funding in that monument preservation fund for purchasing this, or,
So the way we've treated that monument preservation, unless you wanna take that.
Yeah, that Monument Preservation Fund, Rudy, has been just there for emergency purposes. And we've already utilized it one time, let me just clarify that, a couple of years ago, one of our GPS systems went down halfway through the year. And it's tough to go to the commission and say, hey, we need $30,000 for a new GPS system, and we've gotta have it ASAP. So, we were able to draw part of that $30,000 from our Monument Preservation Fund. So it's kind of utilized for emergency purposes. There's not a lot of money in that. We might put in, I don't know what our average is in an annual income or revenue, going into that fund, but it's not a lot. So it builds over year after year, but it's slow.
how's the funding for that actually determined?
It comes from a couple different sources. It comes from, our monument permits. When we take out these $400 permits, that is supposed to go into that fund. It comes from these record survey plats that we review at $20 each. That goes into the Monument Preservation Fund.
So, I mean, I'll disagree with you on the use of that, because I think that was originally set up, not necessarily for a catch-all, but for uses like we're talking about, as I look at the intent of what that was set up. But I know that's the way you view it, I see it a little bit differently.
Well, yeah, well, I guess
I mean, we can go back and forth on this.
Yeah.
But,
So how do you interpret it?
well, I interpret it for uses, even uses of use like this, to be offset some of the equipment that's needed necessary for the preservation of the monument.
But we don't get any state money into that fund, it's all from the activities that we generate there.
Yes.
How much is currently in that fund?
What's that?
How much is currently in the fund, you know?
Oh, golly. Seems like we're sitting around somewhere between 30 and 40, but I don't know, Rudy, I'd have to double check on that. We don't get into it very often. I really don't look closely at that very often. It's just a slow builder.
Right.
And we typically haven't got into that, only as a emergency basis. I mean, if we were to buy this system out of that, it would deplete that significantly. We wouldn't hardly be much in there.
Like half. Like half.
Yeah, assuming we have 40 in there. I'm just not sure what we've got in there. But if we were to,
Yeah, this robot's about $25,000. Not about, that's the exact price.
These are the kind of questions I'm asking you. You gotta understand the pieces, so, not just picking on you.
So I'm curious from your perspective, Commissioner, on something like this. If we bought this out of the Monument Preservation Fund for $25,000, dropped this down to around $15,000, and we did have another GPS system go down, would we come to the commission and ask for a mid-year adjustment to our budget to
Yeah, that's
build?
always an option, you know, for that to happen. I just see this fund as one that is building, and it's built off of, you know, what's currently going on with permits, and I see it as an opportunity for that to offset what is needed and necessary to preserve the monument. And so, when we talk about, I mean, and maybe the conversation could be, what historically have we needed out of that fund over the years? And so we could project and say, we've got to have at least $15,000, $20,000 in there, because we just don't know what the risk is. And so that becomes our risk factor. And then when we have that, anything over and above, we could apply it to something else that would help to preserve the monuments that we're talking about.
Yeah.
I think that would be a conversation. So let's just say that you have $40,000 in there, this costs, 25, and we determined that the $20,000 is a buffer that we've gotta have in there for emergency basis. That means we're $5,433 over that. That would be something that I think you bring to us as a commission and say, here's our buffer, here's where we need to be, here's what we can put towards it. Can you give us the $5,433 to make that difference and keep us there? That's a conversation I'd like to have.
Okay. Fair enough.
So let's maybe talk about, have something outside of the meeting so we can figure out
Okay.
what our pieces are looking at.
I think this is, great. I mean, this is, you did exactly what we asked here. It was really helpful to understand how you're viewing. I even like that, I think we know that everything can't be measured. So initially when I saw a couple of them, they were qualitative, or like you couldn't really say what percentage of attainment that you get to, but then at the end you did, have ones that you can actually see exact numbers, right? 12 meetings, 650 monuments.
Yeah,
So
think
I love that. Yes.
2021's a lot better built.
But it's okay. I mean, it's great. Even the reporting on 2020. I mean, you were able to do it, even though you didn't fill the positions
Yeah.
until now, and you still have empty positions. So this is a really helpful report.
Right. One thing to note, so next year will be even better, so we've created a Google Docs that we've sent out to the crews, so we actually have the crews tracking their work as it's happening in the field. So we have a document that every time they shoot, tie, report, anything's going in on, at the moment it's being done in the field. So next year we'll have exact numbers on absolutely everything we did in the office.
It's awesome. So thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll go ahead and adjourn till.
Sorry, Tanner, I was trying to get unmuted. I just, thank you, Gary, for all you've done to bring the office, forward and the work you guys do. And Anthony, I am excited to see what you'll do in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan.
All right, and with that, we'll adjourn. Thanks.